Now, this is the beginning part of the show where I normally say, hey, welcome to another episode of Gtalk or something like that. But you may have noticed that I've rebranded the show to The Ordinary Effect. And you might say, well, why did you rename the show? So when I first started this, it was something very simple. I was just going to be me, Guido, talking. And so Gtalk seemed like a natural name for it. Truth be told, I didn't realize there were so many other people with the name that started with the letter G that had Gtalk shows. And so finding the show and referencing the show would be somewhat difficult for some folks. And you come up with a bunch of other things when you try to look up Gtalk. So I put my thinking cap on and staying true to what the show was going to be about in terms of, the odds and ends and things that we may not talk about or things that are a challenge out there or of interest, so we say. And I came up with The Ordinary Effect. So, welcome to the first episode of the rebranded Gtalk, which is The Ordinary Effect. Now, what are we going to talk about on this episode? There's so much current news going on and things that impact our daily news cycle. And lately, it's just been a string of different deaths, right? Ozzy Osbourne having passed away, and there's more to come there with the funeral and the what we will find out in later days about the passing. But one that kind of, also hit home because of childhood was the passing of the incredible, later rebranded, the immortal Hulk Hogan, aka Terry Bollea. Now, this was a little bit unexpected. It's one of those ones like, really? Is this fake news? Did he really die? Hulk Hogan, 24-inch pythons? Just a couple of months ago, he was out on the WWE stage touting his Real American beer and out there with Jimmy Hart. And there were rumors the last few weeks about, him not doing well or being in a coma. And sometimes you just don't really know what to believe and where the rumor started. But indeed, Hulk Hogan did die. And you think, well, he said Hulkamania would never die. Look, Hulkamania probably will never die. It'll probably transcend wrestling eras. And he will be the immortal Hulk Hogan in the eyes of the wrestling world. To many. It probably, if you don't know, should be said that in the last several years, he was a bit of a controversial figure. There was the racist tirade that sort of got him in trouble and for a while got him removed from WWE. And then there was the sex tape and, the fallout with his wife, Linda. And then, within the wrestling circle, there was always, hey, Hogan's always got creative control of the destiny. And there was always some wrestlers that maybe were not as happy with him because of that creative control, which changed the outcome of some events. But for me, and I was talking to one of my friends down in Michigan in the United States, and we were reminiscing about Hulk Hogan, our younger years watching WWF, World Wrestling Federation, previously the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, WWF, with Vince McMahon Sr. But anyways, I digress back to this moment here where we were talking about Hulk Hogan, and I said, being a Canadian kid, playing ball hockey on the street and having the jerseys and pretending you were some Canadian hockey player and that you were winning the Stanley Cup, that was a big moment to transition to Sunday morning Superstars of Wrestling, where you'd wait for Hulk Hogan and, the song, I Am a Real American, would come on. And as a Canadian kid, I'm singing, I am a real American. And I'm Hulk Hogan. And, and it's funny, I said Sunday because I'd go to church with my parents, and church wasn't too far away from home. But, the wrestling show would start at 11. The mass would typically end at 10:55. I would run home faster than my parents could drive. So I could make the 11 a.m. show. And a lot of that was the influence of Hulk Hogan. Now, you think of that in today's context, right? I don't think there's a lot of Canadian kids singing, I am a real American, right? Fight for the rights of every man. Listen, we believed that back then. We believed that Hulk Hogan, as a real American, wasn't just fighting for America, but he was fighting for the rights of everyone. Everyone. And I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine who's since passed, Father Gerald Lalonde. And, we were talking about America and being American. And back then, I was 16, 17 years old. But that's how much Hulk Hogan, had helped weave the essence or fabric of the United States of America into Canadian culture, right? What was interesting back then, too, was that it was a lot easier to get, and it wasn't a lot, but it was a lot easier to get WWE wrestling product on TV than it was to get Canadian wrestling content. So occasionally I would watch Stampede Wrestling. Occasionally. So we had a camp. Sometimes folks now call it cottage camp. It was a house. There was a lake. All that stuff. And for the summer, I'd go out there with my parents for 2.5 months. The only time we'd make it into town was every couple of weeks. You go in and get some supplies, bring them back out. And so that entire summer, I remember, the machines wrestling, giant machine, big machine, etc. I never actually saw them wrestle because we were at camp so much. And I would get my news when we'd stop at one of the grocery stores, and I'd beg my dad, and I'd say, hey, can I get Pro Wrestling Illustrated? And so that summer, it was Pro Wrestling Illustrated in the magazine. That's how I kept up. Occasionally, because we didn't have cable out there, we had a little mini TV. Through the antenna, I would pick up Stampede Wrestling. But, through the magazine, I would keep up, and it was always, Hulk Hogan. There was always the Ric Flair and the AWA stuff, but he was still the most influential of the wrestlers at the time. I mean, it became a family thing. We would watch it together. Saturday night's main event. We would order pizza at home and spend the time with my family, and we were just entertained. And Hulk Hogan was a big part of that. So when he passed, part of me says, yeah, I don't know if I liked the public version of Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan in the last few years, or some of the things that he did outside of wrestling. But, we'll all judge that differently depending on what our beliefs are. But there's things that I kind of cringe at. But I can't say, like, without a doubt, as a child, he was very influential. He did make us believe in I am a real American, that he would fight for the rights of every man. So I still, even though he was around, I still miss that version of Hulk Hogan. And I do believe there's a lot of stuff going on now, and conversations are happening where, he's no longer around. But I still believe that, without Hulk Hogan, we may not have what we know today as modern day wrestling, or it may not be as big or as popular. He was a catalyst with his larger than life persona on TV, that he brought to that sports entertainment. So, to the real American Hulk Hogan, to that version, I think I've missed him for a long time, and I'll continue to miss that version of it. And, rest in peace, Hulkster, and take care. There we go. The Ordinary Effect. I hope you'll be back next week. Take care, folks.